What cheer, y'all? Welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we've talked about form, we've talked about class in our elements of handicapping. Now we're on to part three, which is speed. And that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's how fast the horses have run in each of the Derby preps. And there's a lot of different speed figures out there. There's, of course, the Buyer's speed figure, the Brisnet number, the Thorograph, the sheets, the Equibase numbers. There's a lot of ways to determine speed. However, I'm going to use the Brisnet numbers because that's what I use, and I think they're an accurate indication because they do take a lot of things into account in calculating that number, not just the final time. And that's why I don't like Buyer's speed figures. Yes, they account for the variant and how the track was playing, but it's a raw number based on the final time. Brisnet, because I think it's pretty accurate, it takes a lot of things into account, and that's the number that I go by, and that's the one I'm going to use. Now, if I had to recommend one other that I am familiar with, the Thorograph is a really good tool. It accounts for ground loss, accounts for a lot of things, and I would highly suggest taking a look at that. We may have an adjunct to this by listing the Thorograph numbers if I can find the time to do it. And I apologize for not doing it here, but time just doesn't allow me to. But I think the Brisnet numbers, the way we're doing it, is going to give us a good indication of speed. The Kentucky Derby Brisnet par is 103. That's the average number generally needed to win the Kentucky Derby. So we will take that into account in our speed figures. Taking all the speed figures for each horse for each Derby prep, we added them up and we came out with we threw out the high, which is journalism in the Santa Anita Derby, and the low, which was East Avenue in the Bluegrass. And we came up with an average of 95.64. We're going to round that up to 96 for our purposes. Also, a really important thing, I think, in calculating speed figures is what kind of class of race, what kind of quality of race was that number achieved in. So we're going to take that into account as well. The Derby preps, of all of them, the highest rated ones had a race rating of 118 by Brisnet. 117, 116 was towards the bottom. The only race that was rated a Derby prep below, that we're going to consider, I should say, below 116 was the Jeff Ruby at 115. So not a lot of, not going to use that. No credit for running in that race because I don't think it was quality-wise, in comparison, very good. So you get 5 points for running in a 118. You get 4 points for running in a 117 and 3 points for running in a 116 rated race, much the same as we did in our class section. If your speed figures are consistently getting better with each race, you get an additional 10 points. The speed figure, if you run one greater than or equal to the par of 103, you get 5 additional points. Each point per race that is greater than the par of 103. If you run a big race, obviously, you get 2 additional points for every speed figure point above the par of 103. If you run a speed figure greater than or equal to the average of 96, you get 10 points. And then each point per race that is above the average of 96, you get an additional point. So 1 point for 97, 98, 99, and you add them all up, and whatever that number is, you get that as well. So I hope that's clear. We'll go through each individual horse now, and I think it'll become clear. Start with Burnham Square, won the Bluegrass and the Holy Bull. You see the Bluegrass Stakes came out 118, one of the highest rated races, so he gets 5 points just for that. The speed figure was 97. That's 1 point above the average of 96. So he gets 10 points for the raw number of 97, plus an additional point because it was 1 point above the average. So then we go to the Fountain of Youth, 118 race rating, 5 points for that. Ran a speed figure of 96, right on average, so it's greater than or equal to, so he gets 10 points. The Holy Bull, a 116 lower rated race, so he only gets 3 points, but he did run a 101, so he gets 10 points there. And that was 5 points above the average of 96, so he gets an additional 5 points. You add them all up, and you get a total of 49. So I hope that's clear how we're doing this. So now we come to journalism. The likely Derby favorite won the Santa Anita Derby as well as the San Felipe. And you see for the Santa Anita Derby, race rating 118, gets 5 points. Speed figure of 108, so he gets 10 points for that. It was 12 points above the average of 96, so he gets 12 points additionally. Plus, it was 5 points above the Kentucky Derby par, so he gets 2 points per point above the par. 5 points times 2, that's 10 points. For the San Felipe, a 118 rated race, he gets 5 points. Ran a 104, 10 points for being above the 96 average. Then an additional 8 for the 8 points above 96. Then he gets 2 points for that additional point that is above the Kentucky Derby par of 103. So, and then we're going to give him 10 points for progression because, as you can see, his speed figures are getting better per race. You add them all up, you get a total of 62, and no surprise, that's the highest number. Sandman, winner of the Arkansas Derby, had 3 preps, and incidentally, we did note, we will notate at the end who ran in, how many preps they ran in, and it certainly does, it is a consideration, but I would say that if a horse scores pretty high with only 2 preps, I would think that would add to their credit, not necessarily take away from it, but I think these numbers bear out. You see, the Arkansas Derby got a 116 race rating, 3 points. Ran a 101, 10 points for being above average, 5 additional for being 5 points above the average. Rebel Stakes, 4 points for a 117 rated race. 95, now that's below the average, so he doesn't get any credit for that. And the same can be said for the Southwest. He gets 3 points for the 116, but only a 91, no credit. However, because his speed figures are getting better per race, we add 10 points for progression, gives him a total of 35. Rodriguez, winner of the Wood Memorial. Now, the Wood Memorial came back a low-rated race, so 116, he only gets 3 points. Ran a 101, 10 points for above average, 5 additional points for being 5 above the average of 96. San Felipe, 118 rated race, 5 points, no credit though, because he only ran a 91, and the same for the Bob Lewis, 4 points for the race rating, but no credit for the speed. So he gets a total of 37 points. Those California races really hurt him, and he certainly would be higher, but, the way that he was sort of handcuffed in those 2 races, it's hard to know about his progression. And I'd love to give him 10 points because he certainly looks like he's coming into form, but we have to go by the raw numbers, and I think that's a fair assessment. So 37 points it is. Sovereignty, winner of the Fountain of Youth. You see the Florida Derby got a 117, 4 points for that. A 94, below par, no credit. Fountain of Youth, a 118, he gets 5 points, and he ran a 99, that's above average, 10 points there, plus 3 points for 3 points above the average. You add them all up, it's low for 22. And, I mean, we have to take other things into account, and that's why we have 4 aspects of the elements of handicapping. Now, it's pretty certain that he wasn't tuned up all the way because that's the way Bill Mott trains his horses. So I think you can, despite this being a little low number, obviously we can take other factors into consideration, and I think sovereignty is certainly one we got to watch out for. So this may be a case where the numbers don't necessarily do him justice, but we have to go by what they are, and so we come up with 22. Tappan Street won the Florida Derby. 117 rated race, 4 points, 95 speed Brisnet number, below average, no points. Holy Bull, 116, 3 points for that. He ran a 99, so he gets 10 points, plus 3 points for being 3 above 96. He gets a total of 20. Now, this is another one that on the class numbers, he was certainly progressing, but not on the speed numbers. So, again, I'd love to give him points for progression, and I certainly think these numbers don't necessarily do him justice, but do note that the Florida Derby came back a lower rated race speed wise and race rating wise than some of the better ones. So it's a little thing to keep into account, but I think Tappan Street, based on other factors, is certainly one we have to think about for the Derby. But on the raw speed numbers, that's what the number is. East Avenue, Bluegrass Stakes, came back, ran a pretty good second. And for that race, he gets 5 points because it's a 118. Speed number 97, one above average, so 10 points for getting a number above average, an additional point for being one over the average. Risen Star, low rated race, 116, only gets 3, and he ran an 80. He gets nothing for that, so consequently, he gets a 19. And that may surprise if you compare him to like Tappan Street or Sovereignty, but it just goes to show when you only run one good race, regardless of how many Derby preps you have, your number's going to be pretty low. And I would consider this to be very accurate for East Avenue. Chunk of Gold, a horse who has been a surprise this year. He ran in 2 low-rated races. Once the Risen Star and Louisiana Derby, both 116, so 3 points for each. Ran a 98 in the Louisiana Derby, so he gets 10 points, plus 2 for being above 96. Ran a 94 in the Risen Star, no credit there. However, he is progressing, so you give him 10 points for getting progressively faster. The added interesting aspect is the fact that the distances are getting longer and he's getting faster. So something to consider there as well. Based on the raw numbers, he gets 28. Coal Battle, winner of the Rebel Stakes, and great story. Lonnie Briley, the old hard boot trainer, finally gets a Derby horse. Arkansas Derby again came out low at 116, 3 points, ran a 93, below average, no credit. The Rebel Stakes, however, 117, a better rated race, got a 4 points for that. 98, ran a nice figure for that, 10 points above average, 2 points for being above 96. Gets a total of 19. Again, another one that may seem a little low, but take into account he didn't progress. And it is an interesting little note that as the distances are getting longer, his numbers are seemingly dipping a little bit. He may not have been cranked up all the way. We've noticed this on the Derby Trail this year. A lot of trainers are giving him that good race to start, and that second one that seems to be a little something off the fastball. That may be the case here. Coal Battle could very well rebound and run a better race, but on the raw numbers of the speed figures, he's a 19. Tistastic won the Louisiana Derby. Another great example of one race, how it kind of compromises you a bit in terms of speed figures. 116, 3 points for the Louisiana Derby. Ran a 100, gets 10 points for above average, 4 points for being above 96. But in the Rebel Stakes in the Southwest, he ran 90s in both, no credit there, so he gets a total of 24. Again, running one good race does hamper what your speed number is. Final Gambit, he's only got one race, the Jeff Ruby Stakes, and he's getting no credit for running in that race. He got a 101 speed figure. It is 10 points above, and he gets 5 above 96, so 5 additional points. And he is progressing. You look at his overall numbers, he's definitely getting faster and getting better. Obviously, the big question is, can he do it on dirt? But all counts so far, he's traded pretty well. So he gets a total of 25. That may surprise people for when you consider other horses who've had multiple preps. But you can see when you have those mediocre numbers and then run a big one, as opposed to just one big one, it does make a difference. But Final Gambit, he's right around the middle, and I think that's that's a pretty good indication. We'll just see if he can do it on dirt. That will be the ultimate consideration, is how we think he's going to handle the surface change. But 25 for Final Gambit. Citizen Bull, this one might be surprised a little bit. Santa Anita Derby, 5 points for that race, got a 97. Even though it was by all accounts a pretty mediocre effort, he gets 10 points plus a point for being over the average. Bob Lewis, He ran the 10 points for running the average of 96 and 4 points for the race. And he gets 10 points for progression because he's running faster with each race. Obviously, once again, other factors to account for. This is just one aspect of our handicapping, and it's going to surprise people a bit, but he's got 30 points, and that's higher than some of the more prominent horses. Publisher has yet to win a race, but the Arkansas Derby ran a 98, 3 points for the race, even though it was low rated at 116, 10 points for running above average, an additional 2 for running 2 points above the average, and the Rebel Stakes for nothing for the speed figure because it was a 93, nothing for the Southwest Stakes because it was an 83. He does get the points for the race rating, but he is getting progressively faster. And that makes him extremely intriguing, I think, for the Derby. And he gets a total of 42, and that's one of the better speed figures. So, it really, I think, as I've said all along, progression is just so important on the Derby trail. And when you see horses getting progressively faster, you really got to pay attention. So, to me, Publisher is one you seriously have to consider for the Derby. American Promise. Okay, now, this is very interesting. You look at the Virginia Derby. It wasn't rated terribly high, so he gets 3 points, but he ran a 105. He gets 10 points for that. He gets 9 points for being above the average. He gets 4 additional because he ran 2 points above the Kentucky Derby par. But you look at the Risen Star, he gets 3 points for being in the race, but that's it. Numbers are below the average. Same thing for the Southwest Stakes. But on a whole, you see a horse who is progressing. Now, it is a little concerning that when you see that big a jump from one race to another, especially since it was around one turn. But on the raw speed numbers, he gets 42, and that's one of the highest ones. If nothing else, I think it indicates that this is a very interesting horse going into the Derby. And as I've said many times, what's most intriguing to me is he's not even 3 years old yet, and he's a big one. And that means a lot in the Derby as well. So American Promise, if this does nothing else, we want to pay particular attention to him, I think, coming into the Derby. Flying Mohawk, only one race to talk about, the Jeff Ruby, where he got second. No credit for the race rating. Speed number was 97, 10 points for above average, 1 point for above 96. Gets a total of 11, and I think that's about right. We just don't have a lot to go on, and it wasn't on dirt. We'll see what happens when he moves to dirt. But given the quality of that race, he's probably not a horse I'm going to be thinking about a whole lot. And he's towards the bottom with 11. Grand, another very interesting horse after a great Wood Memorial. You see, 3 points for the Wood. It was a little low-rated race, but he ran a monster, and he gets a 101 speed number, the same as Rodriguez. 10 points for that, 5 points above the average. So he gets another 5 there, and he's definitely progressing. And I say that because although he's run a 119 class rating for each 3 races, his speed numbers are getting better, and his fractions are getting better as the races are getting longer. This is a very interesting horse, especially when you consider he's bred for 2 turns. So we're going to give him 10 points for progression. That gives him a total of 28. So Owen Almighty, the Tampa Bay Derby winner, and I'll say it again, I hate to be a broken record, I really wish he wasn't running in this race. I just don't think he belongs, and I think the numbers bear that out. The Bluegrass Stakes, 5 points for being in the race, but he ran a 92, even though he was dead last with Chancer McPatrick. So no points aside from the race rating. Same thing, Tampa Derby. 4 points for the race, but a 95 is below average. So he doesn't get anything for his speed numbers. He's not progressing. And I don't think he wants the distance. I think we can all agree with that. He only gets 9 points. That's right near the bottom. And finally, Built. He's been in the money in a couple races in Louisiana. That last one in particular, though, not very good. So he gets 3 points for the Louisiana Derby and the Risen Star. We're not considering the Lecomte, I'll say again, because It was a small field. He's the only horse who came out of it, and it wasn't a very highly rated race. I don't think there's much point in including it. You see, as the distances are getting longer, speed figures are dropping. Had a pretty mediocre finish in the Louisiana Derby, and neither number was above average or even at the average, so consequently he gets 6 points. That puts him at the bottom. So finally, we'll look at Luxar Cafe and admire Daytona. Now, I would very much love to. I toyed with the idea of trying to put a guesstimate in based upon what I've heard and how he stacks up speed figure wise, but I don't think it would be fair to even try to do that. And we can't, we just can't come up with a number. So consequently, I'm not going to have numbers for Luxar Cafe or Admire Daytona. There are other factors to consider for sure. And I think by all accounts, this is a horse that we really want to be taking a look at. You look at that pedigree, he's been running great around 2 turns, and I think he could be a real surprise in the Derby. So while speed figure wise, we can't really do much with him, there are other factors to consider. And, I might even give him, I toyed with the idea of giving the X factor for 10 points, but if I can't give it to anybody else, I don't think it's fair to give it to him either. So please keep that in mind. This is a horse I will certainly be paying attention to without a doubt. And same thing for Admire Daytona. From all I've gathered, I have listened to some people who follow Japan racing talking about this horse, and probably not a horse who's going to factor terribly much, especially when you consider the running style. If he does run up amongst the leaders, I think it might be rather difficult for him to compete. However, he has run from off the pace before, and if you're looking for just a solid bomb at monster odds like T.O. Password a couple years ago, who just might back into the superfecta, maybe. But, it's just really hard to gauge. And again, I just don't want to try to put a speed figure to a horse where I really can't qualify it. And I hope you understand from that perspective. So the 2 Japanese will remain a little bit of a mystery. We'll see how they train, and we'll see if we can come up with some other factors to accurately consider them. But on speed, just don't know. So here is the memorialized list for you, and you see journalism has got a clear speed edge over everybody else, and that wasn't a really big surprise. It's a little surprise to me that Burnham Square is up as high as he is, but he's run in the better races and he's run well. He's not. I mean, he's kind of a hard horse to know what to do with. I really like him, but he seems on the small side, and the way he runs, it might be tough for him to work out a trip in the Derby. But you can't argue with the fact that he's been very competitive, and speed figure wise, right behind journalism. You see American Promise. I mean, he's another one. We'll just have to see if he can build off that Virginia Derby around 2 turns, and that remains a little bit of a mystery. But I think he's a horse we have to think about. Obviously, Citizen Bull is a little high at 40 points, I think, based upon the San Diego Derby. But again, we have to go by the speed numbers, and there it is. But obviously there's other factors to consider, but on speed, he's number 4. And Sandman, you might be surprised not to see him a little higher, but again, horses who progress, sometimes those early races where they don't get any points, it's going to compromise how they actually end up. But again, we have other factors to consider. Publisher and Chunk of Gold, another 2, look like they're moving in the right direction. Grand as well. And Rodriguez, really only put one big one together. But those California races, maybe not an accurate representation of what this horse can do. Maybe the Wood is the accurate one, but we have to go by the raw numbers. So all in all, and incidentally, the asterisk you see indicate how many prep races they had. If you don't see an asterisk, it means they had 3. So Citizen Bull had 2, Grand had 1, Final Gambit had 1, and I hope that's clear. I wanted to put that in there as sort of a way to give a little more perspective to what we have speed wise. But these are hard numbers. I think it's a fair assessment, and I think some of them are a little low. But honestly, you probably got a higher buyer number for, say, Sovereignty and Tapan Street. But again, that's the final time. It doesn't take everything into account. And that's why I like Brisnet. And it's proven to me, for my handicapping, to be extremely accurate. And that's why I'm using it. So there's speed. I know this will be a very controversial aspect of our handicapping, elements of handicapping. And I welcome the input. You guys are great with it. And I'd love to hear some different thoughts. But I thought this was the fairest way I could gauge the horses. And judging by, the ones that really haven't performed terribly well or have been inconsistent are down towards the bottom. And the horses who have run consistently the best, speed figures are up near the top. I think it's a pretty good representation. And again, I'll say it one more time. There are other factors. We're going to talk about pace. That's going to make a big difference, I think, in how we look at the horses. And so we want to put them all together, form, class, speed, and pace, when we judge our Derby contenders. So anyway, there's speed. We will have pace coming up as soon as I can get it together. It will probably be after the post draw. This is Saturday, so Saturday evening they're going to draw the post. That's going to make a big difference, as well as the morning line when that comes out. We will reserve those two, interpreting those two aspects until we do our final assessment, and then we'll be able to really accurately put it all together. But I hope this is of value to you and in your own assessment, and gives you a different perspective on how perhaps to look at some of these horses. Certainly, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. And again, thanks so much to all of you who continue to grow our community. Loving the comments. Keep those coming. It's terrific. And I've heard some really interesting alternative perspectives, and that's great too. And I hope you guys read them, because this is one of those endeavors that you can't have enough information and you can't have enough perspectives. But ultimately, you got to make your own decision. This is just my interpretation of it, and I hope it helps you. That's all I can ask for when we do these. So that's it from here. Plenty of content coming. We're going to get to the Oaks next week, so be on the lookout for that as well. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.